We are in the midst of a twin crisis that's interactive and almost synergistic. Climate change and these large-scale, fast-spreading wildfires that are threatening and in many cases destroying homes and communities.
Because of fire suppression and all the things that have happened in the way that our Western colonizing people have been dealing with the land, we have a really serious situation.
Through time immemorial, many indigenous peoples have stewarded landscapes utilizing various practices, including intentional, low-intensity fire known as cultural burning. The increasing prevalence of high-intensity wildfires is directly connected to the colonial policies of genocide, forced removal, and criminalization of native tribal groups' burning practices.
The impact of the changes of European management makes the forest more flammable.
A lot of the problem of these wildfires in terms of homes burning down is all the excess down dead woody fuels and vegetation that have accumulated in many cases because we fought fires all these past decades, and now they're burning in these conditions of climate change. Hot, dry, droughty conditions, strong winds.
Hatlum Eco-Regeneration Camp in Mount Shasta, California, is a perfect example of a highly impacted forest landscape.
Hatlum Eco-Regeneration Camp is a camp on the slopes of Mount Shasta in California, the traditional territory of the Shasta people. This area here was held by the railroad for extraction of timber for building the railroad. And the impact of that tree removal 100 years ago, the place is still not recovered fully.
And what has come back is fields and fields and fields of brush.
And we just have a few trees coming in, and there's a lot of dead brush here. With a catastrophic fire that would come through here, the manzanita burns like a crown fire through the leaves and will light the lower limbs.
And it's so dense that if a fire came through here, it would devastate everything.
The team at Hatlum Eco-Regeneration Camp has been working to restore the landscape and mitigate wildfire risk.
We believe that an embodied practice where you're actively participating in this restoration
and really get your hands dirty
is the only way that we can transform our relationship from one of extraction to one of contribution. So one of the most important things that we're doing here is releasing trees from the encroachment of the brush.
This fuel that's actually a hazard on the landscape because it can carry fire and it can make fires worse. We need to treat that fuel. We need to get rid of it somehow. And so typically the way that is done is that it's piled and burned and just turned into CO2 and other greenhouse gases.
And that's one way, but that generates a lot of smoke, and it kind of puts carbon back in the sky, which we really want to pull it down from the sky, sink it into the ground.
My first summer here, I was scratching my head and it just came to me, biochar. Why not make biochar and restore some of that carbon, sequester it into the soil, and build more healthy habitat for the microorganisms that live in the soil?
Biochar is created when wood is placed in a high-temperature, low-oxygen environment. Biochar is resistant to decay and stores carbon instead of releasing it into the atmosphere as carbon dioxide. Its unique structure also retains water and adsorbs soil minerals and nutrients, making it readily available for plant growth.
Once the structure of the wood has been converted to this material, when it gets added to the soil, it has amazing properties to improve soil health. But more interesting to me is the fact that this material will last for centuries or millennia in the soil. And so by converting woody material into biochar, we sequester that carbon for generations and generations and generations.
So as we've learned more about this practice of making biochar, it's gotten us really excited.
We're making the equivalent of fossil fuel and we're putting it back in the ground.
In the late winter of 2021, an educational demonstration was offered at Hotlum Eco-Regeneration Camp on the production of biochar, utilizing a remarkably simple, highly portable device known as a kiln.
And so now we're going to put the kiln together. This is the newest double wall design. Portability, scalability, efficiency. That's what this design is about here. You guys are right on top of this. This is awesome.
Like that. Tight.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Locked in.
Slick. And so as we look around here, you see a little bit of light in that corner, right? That's your enemy. So what we're going to want to do is scoop some soil up against that. When you're doing conifer work, when you get long straight branches, I've set up an 8-panel one of these. So it's 4 by 12, and you can get 16-foot branches in there because you just push the end, it curls.
Probably all the
green stuff on the very bottom, and then big stuff to flatten that down and build up on top of that, and then we'll go finer and finer as we go. This isn't an exact science. What we're trying to do is get things as tight as possible in here. Normally, if you're building a campfire or whatever, you want to do a lattice because you want oxygen in there, right? You want to get a complete burn. But here, our objective is to get an incomplete burn, and so we want to get things as tight as we can. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create a fine fuel cap on the top, the finest, so we'll save our finest fuel, our most flammable fuel, for the top of the kiln. And so we'll light the kiln from the top. Here we go. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a flame cap. This is the least amount of propane I've ever used. I come from the rainy north. You can see the smoke that, went up into the air, pretty minimal right now. This is a pretty clean burn. Heated air rises, but radiant heat goes in all directions. So as the flame burns on the top, that radiant heat is projected in all directions, but the heat that goes downward chars the wood on the bottom. And so the reason that you put these metal walls all the way around is to starve the bottom of the kiln of oxygen. So you don't get combustion, you get pyrolysis. Think about when you really slam down your wood stove at night, right? And in the morning, there's all these lumps of char in there because you got incomplete combustion. And that's what we're aiming for here. Slow pyrolysis, right? That's our goal. And so now the last step of the process is for us to quench. We'll remove that bracket on the corner and open the doors of that kiln. And then we'll get in there and start dragging that char out so we expose the hot spots. You can drop the temperature, which you do by adding water, or you can completely eliminate the oxygen. So we're going to do a little bit of both here. Being able to break the kiln down and get in there and rake it open, we can expose those hot areas. This is sequestered carbon, which if we can quantify it, we can get credit for this carbon on the offset markets and we can trade this.
We are striving to support local fire practitioners and policy that puts safe, prescribed fire back into the people's hands. Biochar is one piece of the puzzle. It offers a community-scale approach to rectifying the impacts of harmful forest management practices while mitigating wildfire risk.
As forest ecologists, we're seeing biochar not as a product, but as a service. Biochar is particularly important in these soils because of its ability to hold water and the nutrients that are in that water that get adsorbed onto this surface. And the other beauty of this is that we're creating good quality, sustainable jobs for skilled forest workers.
The land needs more fire, but we need to keep fire in the forest and out of our homes and communities. And biochar seems to be a nice way that we get the benefits of both.
Hey, I hope you find your way out there, where you're going. Hey, I know you find your way out there when you're gone. I'll be near you all along. I'll be here. I'll be singing songs of adoration and support, like I do, like a fire in the night, warming light to surround you in the dark. In the dark. In the dark.